Hello students, this is Mrs. Sonal Patil. In our last class, we have studied about spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Schematic representation of spermatogenesis and oogenesis we have studied, which is again very important question. Today, we will study about menstrual cycle. The reproductive cycle in the female primates is called menstrual cycle, and the cycle of events starting from one menstruation to the next one is also called as menstrual cycle. It is a complex series of rhythmic changes that occur in the female reproductive system at the interval of 28 days. The onset of first menstrual cycle is called menarche. Again, a very important question for 1 mark, which starts at puberty. So menarche is starting at the puberty. So the first menstrual cycle will begin at puberty, which is called as menarche. Menstruation is the periodic discharge of blood, mucus and cellular debris from the uterus through vagina at about 4 weeks interval. There are different phases involved in the menstrual cycle. The first one is menstrual phase or destructive phase. The second is proliferative phase or pre-ovulatory phase, or it is also called as a follicular phase. The third is ovulatory phase, and the last one is secretory or post-ovulatory or luteal phase. So these are the phases of menstrual cycle. Let us study one by one. First one is the menstrual phase, or it is also called as destructive phase. This phase begins from very first day and lasts till 5th day. It occurs in the absence of pregnancy. This phase is characterized by menstrual discharge. The discharge contains mucus, cellular debris, and blood shed from internal lining of the uterus. So this is the period which is lasting for about 5 days, where the discharge is occurring, which contains mucus, cellular debris and the blood shed which is being shed from the internal lining of the uterus. So this is the first phase in the menstrual cycle, that is menstrual phase. The second is proliferative phase, or it is also called as pre-ovulatory phase or follicular phase. This phase begins from the 6th day of menstruation and lasts till 13th day. This phase is characterized by the transformation of primary follicle into mature Graafian follicle under the influence of FSH. So here, as the name is given as follicular phase. So here, transformation of the primary follicle into mature Graafian follicle is occurring under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone, that is FSH, while the uterine epithelium receives more blood and it will increase in thickness. The secretion of gonadotropins like LH and FSH increases gradually during follicular phase. So these gonadotropins will increase gradually during the follicular phase, and the transformation is occurring of primary follicle into the mature follicle, and this phase begins from 6th to and it lasts up till the 13th day. So this is the second phase in the menstrual cycle called as proliferative phase or pre-ovulatory phase or follicular phase. The third one is ovulatory phase. It is a phase in which both LH and FSH are at the peak level. LH is nothing but the luteinizing hormone. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone, are at the peak level, and there is an LH surge on 14th day of the cycle which induces the rupture of Graafian follicle. So on the 14th day there is LH surge because both LH and FSH are at its peak level, which results into the LH surge on 14th day of the cycle, which will induce the rupture of Graafian follicle and release of egg. And this rupturing of the Graafian follicle and the release of egg, the process is called as ovulation. Very important again for 1 mark, it is called as ovulation. So the name itself is given ovulatory phase. Means what? Here during this particular phase, ovulation is occurring Graphene follicle ruptures, releases the egg. That is ovulatory phase. And the last phase is secretory or post-ovulatory or luteal phase. This phase begins from 15th day of menstruation and lasts till 28th day. It is characterized by the progressive thickening and vascularization of uterine epithelium. So, the lining of the uterus progressively thickens during this particular phase. The ruptured follicle soon transforms into corpus luteum, which secretes large amount of progesterone essential for maintenance of endometrium. Endometrium is the inner lining of the uterus. So the ruptured follicle is transforming into corpus luteum, which will secrete large amount of progesterone, which is also called as pregnancy hormone, which is essential for maintenance of the endometrium. The corpus luteum persists only if fertilization occurs. So if the fertilization occurs, then only the corpus luteum will persist. Remember about this particular point. So it persists only if fertilization occur. During pregnancy, all events of menstrual cycle stops and there is no menstruation. The degenerated corpus luteum is replaced by corpus albicans. Remember, degenerated corpus luteum is replaced by corpus albicans. So these are the events which are occurring during the menstrual cycle. So remember, there are the first phase is menstrual phase, the second is proliferative phase, the third one is ovulatory phase, and the last one is secretory phase. So remember, these phases are very, very important from exam point of view. A 5 marks question may be asked on this. So diagrammatically it is represented over here. Different phases of the menstrual cycle. Growing follicles are shown here. Ovulation occurring. Corpus luteum, corpus albicans are been formed. Level of the ovarian hormones is been shown. So this is the diagrammatic representation of the menstrual cycle. Menopause. In human females, menstrual cycle ceases after about 45 to 54 years of age, and the cessation is called menopause. So menopause is nothing but it is a stoppage of the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle stops at the age of about 45 to 54, which is called as menopause. Very important again for 1 mark. Menopause results due to the decline in the production of estrogen and progesterone from the ovary because of the absence of developing follicles. So that was about the menstrual cycle. Coming to the next, fertilization and implantation. So fertilization is nothing but fusion of the male and the female gametes. During copulation, the semen is transferred into vagina. The motile sperms move through the cervix, enter the uterus, and reach the ampullary isthmic region of the fallopian tube. If you remember, when we studied the female reproductive system, we have studied about the fallopian tube, where it is having an ampullary region, isthmic region. So here ampulla, isthmus, you have studied about that. So there is an ampullary isthmic region, or the junction is there where the actual fertilization is taking place. So very, very important question again for 1 mark. So the sperms will move through the cervix and reach the ampullary isthmic region of the fallopian tube. Ovum released from the ovary also reaches the ampullary isthmic region of the fallopian tube. So even ovum is reaching the ampullary isthmic region as well as the sperm reaches. Fertilization can only occur if the ovum and sperms are transported simultaneously to the ampullary isthmic region. So they both have to be simultaneously transferred to the region. This is the reason why not all copulations lead to the fertilization and pregnancy. The process of fusion of sperm with an ovum is called fertilization. During fertilization, a sperm comes in contact with zona pellucida layer of the ovum. So remember, ovum is covered by a layer called as zona pellucida, where the sperm will come in contact with this particular layer and induces changes in the membrane that block the entry of additional sperms. Thus, it ensures that only one sperm can fertilize an ovum. So remember, during fertilization, large amount of sperms reach the ovum, but only the sperm, only one single sperm enters the ovum. So during fertilization, a sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer of the ovum and induces changes in the membrane, which will block the entry of the additional sperm. Thus, it ensures that only one sperm can fertilize an ovum. The secretions of acrosome, if you remember the structure of the sperm, at the anterior end at the tip it is having acrosome, which will help the sperm enter into the cytoplasm of the ovum through the zona pellucida and the plasma membrane. This induces the completion of meiotic division of the secondary oocyte. So here secondary oocyte is completing its meiotic division at this particular stage. So remember, sperms enter, reaches the amplerasthemic region, ovum also reaches the amplerasthemic region, and there the fertilization of the male and the female gametes is taking place, where during fertilization what is happening is that the membrane is nothing but it is inducing the changes. Sperm, when it comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer, it induces the changes in the membrane which will block the entry of the additional sperm. So only one sperm can enter the ovum and fertilize it. So this is occurring during the fertilization. And the secretions of acrosome will help the sperm to enter into the cytoplasm of the ovum. So this will complete the meiotic division of the secondary oocyte. The second meiotic division is also unequal and results in the formation of the second polar body and a haploid ovum. Soon, the haploid nucleus of the sperms and that of the ovum fuse together to form diploid zygote. So diploid zygote is being formed by the fusion of the sperm and the ovum. One has to remember that sex of the baby has to be decided at this stage itself. The chromosome pattern in the human female is XX and that of the male is XY. Therefore, all the haploid gametes produced by the female have the sex chromosome X, whereas in the male gametes, that is the sperms, the sex chromosome could be either X or Y. So in males it will be either X or Y, whereas in the female it is XX. 50%, hence 50% of sperms carry X chromosome while the other 50% carry the Y. After the fusion of male and female gametes, the zygote would carry either XX or XY depending on whether the sperm carrying X or Y fertilized the ovum. The zygote carrying XX would develop into female baby and XY would form a male. So remember, this is again a very important question from exam point of view. Sex determination in humans. That is why scientifically it is correct to say that the sex of the baby is determined by the father and not by the mother, since the father is carrying XY chromosome whereas mother has XX. The mitotic division starts at the zygote as the zygote moves through the isthmus of the oviduct called cleavage towards the uterus. So mitotic divisions are occurring in the zygote. So as I told, zygote is formed by the fusion of the male and the female gamete. Now this zygote will move through the isthmus of the oviduct, and these divisions which are called as nothing but cleavages are occurring in them, and they move towards the uterus to form 2, 4, 8, 16 daughter cells which are called as blastomeres. The embryo with 8 to 16 blastomeres is called morula. The morula continues to divide and transforms into blastocyst as it moves further into the uterus. So morula gets transforms into blastocyst. Now the blastomeres in the blastocyst are arranged into an outer trophoblast. They get arranged into outer trophoblast and an inner group of cells attached to the trophoblast called the inner cell mass. The trophoblast layer then gets attached to the endometrium and the inner cell mass gets differentiated as embryo. So remember, blastomeres and the blastocysts are arranged in two layers. Outer layer is called as trophoblast and the inner group of cells will transform into inner cell mass. And the trophoblast layer gets attached to the endometrium, which is the inner lining of the uterus, and the inner cell mass gets differentiated as embryo. After attachment, the uterine cells divide rapidly and covers the blastocyst. As a result, the blastocyst becomes embedded in the endometrium of the uterus. This is called implantation. So attachment of the blastocyst to the endometrium of the uterus is called as implantation. Again, very important question for 1 mark, and it leads to pregnancy. So this was about the fertilization and implantation. So here it has been shown diagrammatically, sperms entering the ovum, then mitotic divisions are occurring resulting into morula stage. You can see here the divide transforms into morula, ball of cells, then it transforms into blastocyst. Here different stages are being shown. So this is the region where the development is occurring, and then finally this blastocyst reaches the endometrium of the uterus and gets attached to the endometrium, which is called as implantation. So this diagram shows you the transport of ovum, fertilization and passage of growing embryo through the fallopian tube. So again a very important question from exam point of view. So today we have studied about menstrual cycle and fertilization and implantation. We will stop here, and in the next class we will study the next part of this particular chapter. Thank you.